Hello and welcome to Military Mantra. In this interview, we have today's Squadron Leader Delshad Master, who have served in Indian Air Force for close to 12 years. And in this interview, we'll try to understand her journey of joining Indian Air Force, life within Indian Air Force, and various life lessons that she has learned over her service. So welcome, ma'am, and thank you for coming on this interview today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here, Akash.
Ma'am, if you could start telling us, how was your journey of joining Forge back then and what motivated you to join the Indian Air Force?
Right, sure. I have always wanted to join a uniformed service, right, since the time I was a kid. Way back then, the Indian Armed Forces did not induct women into the service. So for me, this uniform ambition in life was to clear the UPSC and then join the IPS, right? That's what I wanted to do. But later on, when I was in class 10th, I heard about the first batch of women officers being inducted into the Indian Army. And that's when I had a change of track and I said, okay, not the police, but the army. I always wanted to wear olives. I always wanted to be in the Indian Army. Indian Air Force happened completely by chance. After my post-graduation, I had filled up forms for both the Air Force and the Army. Again, all of this secretly, not known to anyone, not my friends, not my family. All this I just kept doing on my own. And I got the call letter. I got the call up for SSB from the Air Force. I kept waiting for the Army, but that never really happened. And as luck would have it, I got through the SSB at first shot and got a call up for my medicals and then my training. So that's been my entry into the Indian Air Force.
Ma'am, if you could also speak about, your experience in the SSB and back then, how did you prepare for various tests that happens? For example, the psychology, the GTO test, and the interview. How did you prepare back then for all of them?
Sure. So first, let me begin by placing a context. I went through the SSB way back in 2001. So those were days, your internet was there. I won't say internet wasn't there, but internet could only be accessed for half an hour or 1 hour depending on how rich you were. You had to go to an internet cafe and then browse only if you knew the entire URL. And so none of this, and internet was not very accessible, and neither were sites accessible. People didn't know about any of that. So first and foremost, all my groundwork, all the reading up, all the finding out form kab niklega, kab bharna hai, kab kya bharna hai, everything happened through physical means, right? No, and nothing was digital, nothing was virtual. I used to pore over copies of employment news every 15 days. I mean, you go through kya government exams aa rahi hain, kaun se entries release ho rahi hain, all of that. Okay, used to have like a big fat career guidance book that used to be at the library, which you could not take away, but you could just read it over there. So all of that happened. And as far as preparation was concerned, I honestly did not have anyone to ask. But while I was doing my master's, I did it in defense and strategic studies. So I was surrounded by people from the army. We had one Lieutenant General Rao. I'm sorry, Major General Rao. We had two lieutenant colonels who were in our senior course. So they were 1 year senior to us in PG. In PG, they were a year senior. So they were the two lieutenant colonels and a lot of other visitors to the department who were from the army. So in that sense, I could have gone to a lot of people, but whomsoever I asked, the only piece of advice they ever gave me was just be yourself. Tum jaisi ho waise jana and things will be fine. Nobody really sat you down and told you the details. The only person who actually helped me was a very, very good friend of mine. He still is. Called Mahesh, and he was my friend during PG. He had been to a lot of SSB interviews. He also was an aspirant, a very, very, very keen aspirant. So he had been through it multiple times. He sat me down and took me through every stage. And apart from whatever he told me, I had another book which I had purchased for SSB preparation. I used that book largely for the WAT, the word association test, right? And that too, because I know that my drawback is speed. My writing speed is a massive drawback. I write very slowly. So the only thing that I would actually practice was just set a timer and try and write those sentences, within the given time. I didn't have anybody to review my sentences, tell me where I was going wrong, what I could have done better. So none of that. But I just went with that one piece of advice: be yourself, be authentic, don't fake it, don't lie. The minute you lie, two more questions and they'll get to know, so don't ever fake it. So I mean, that's all I had with me. I went with that and thankfully got through. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Ma'am,
about my preparation.
nowadays we hear a lot about the OLQs, the officer like qualities, that there are some 15 OLQs which they look for. What is your perspective
Yes.
about those OLQs? Do people develop them and then go to SSB, or does that get improved over the training? Or what is your perspective on those things?
Right. Now, OLQs are not something you can, pick off a bucket list and develop overnight, because 15 दिन में मेरा SSB आ रहा है, तो let me pick this off the shelf, pick that off the shelf, and 15 में से ये वाले 10 लेके जाऊंगी या ये वाले 10 मैं display करूंगी. It doesn't happen that way. OLQs are largely dependent upon your upbringing, right? Your values, your upbringing, the way you treat others. But largely this whole concept of OLQs, I think a person doesn't grow up thinking that he or she does certain things because they are OLQs and they will get her or him through the SSB, right? You either have it or you don't. So you cannot gain them or buy them off the shelf, a few days before SSB. It's good to know what those qualities are, and when you start displaying them, my advice would be, if you're going to pick up on those OLQs, keep them for life. These are just basic general values. They are called OLQs, but then they apply to anything and everything in every field, no matter what. So if you're genuinely going to start learning to be courteous, learning to be respectful, learning to be brave, learning to be courageous, it doesn't mean that you be courageous only those 4 or 5 days in the SSB when someone is watching you. Make it a habit, make it a part of life. And if you have it from earlier, even better, develop it further, enhance it. But don't try, and once again, don't try and fake it. So just because you have the list with you, SSB में जाके मैं ये demonstrate करूंगा, मैं ये करूंगा, मैं ये दिखाना चाहता हूँ. Don't do that, because everything is see-through, everything is visible. Even at times when you think that no one is looking, someone's watching. So just don't fake it. Know your OLQs, but carry them through the rest of your life as well.
Got it. Ma'am, if you could also tell us about, your experience in the academy. You would have gone to Air Force Academy. How was life back then? And, any experience that you would like, or memory that you would like to share with the audience who will be watching this?
Okay. So this is funny, but I'm not a runner at all, right? So running is something that I just can't do. Even till this date, I find it very, very difficult to run. So one of the most difficult things in academy, I have so many stories, Akash, but yeah, okay. This is what comes to mind. So running is something that I always had trouble with, and given the fact that I had fractured my leg once, I found that very, very difficult. But in academy and in the forge, you're never an individual, you're never singular, you're always a team, and that sort of carries through while in service, even otherwise. You participate, you win, you lose as a team, you are given punishments as a team. Your entire squadron is punished for even one person, one cadet doing something wrong, right? So that the team spirit is very strongly integral and drilled into you as part of your training. And thanks to that, a lot of my course mates are to thank for taking me across the finishing line, whether it is the cross country or the foot march or the night march, or even the cross country that you have towards the end of the training session. So the FCTC camp, all of that, it's largely thanks to my course-mates. I really need to thank them for helping me, pushing me, pulling me, holding me and taking me along and getting me across the finishing line. And I have a similar story even for the 10-meter jump from the swimming pool. You're supposed to jump. So while I knew swimming and I was a good swimmer, but the jump literally scared me. There again, it was my friend who pushed me because the threat was, you won't get commissioned if you don't jump. If you don't do this, you're not going to be on the parade ground on commissioning day. So she's the one who finally pushed me to go through with it. So all in all, a lot of memories. I was not a very physically active person in academy, so I won't harp or I won't give tall tales about that. But thanks to the teamwork and thanks to a lot of my friends and course-mates for pulling me through. And this will apply to all others who are listening and who feel that probably they're physically weak or they're physically not able to cope up with the stress and strain of, the physical activities that happen in academy. So all I want to say is don't worry. One, within the first 2 weeks, you'll lose 10 kgs. So that'll help. Okay, you will get faster. Secondly, teamwork. So teamwork will get you through. Partner up with people who are better than you, partner up with people a little stronger than you, make good friends, make lifelong friends who can take you along. They will see you through. So as long as you have the OLQs, as long as you've been selected by SSB, these hurdles are very small hurdles. These hurdles are just physical hurdles. As long as you're mentally tough and you're emotionally tough, these you will go through very, very easily, very, very smoothly. So you just don't have to break down mentally. That's more important.
Got it, ma'am. Ma'am, if you could also tell us, your journey after the academy and, how does the training look like for an education officer in the Indian Air Force?
Right. So speaking of training all over, because all the branches have the same training. I mean, by and large, other than your specialist training, which happens in the second term, the first term is general subjects, which across the board are common to all. Air Force, compared to the Army, is a very intellectual force, I would say, or rather the emphasis is more on studies than on physicals. In the Army, it's a lot more on the physicals, right? So that's one thing. Secondly, in the second term, you go into your specialist studies. So there you have your branch studies. That's where we are then trained to be trainers. I'm sorry. So largely it's like a mini B.Ed that you end up doing for the next 6 months for the education branch I'm speaking. You end up doing like a small B.Ed course where you have now to be on the other side where your instructor stood and take a class for your fellow cadets to begin with as an experiment. And then of course, other officers as well. So to quote my own example, as a flying officer, I was thrust into a training institute which was not for airmen, but for other officers. While most of my other course-mates, they went to airmen training institutes, I was pushed into an officer training institute. So the first day, a one-day-old flying officer is taking the class of flight lieutenants, squadron leaders, and wing commanders, right? So that's really scary. But then your training prepares you for that, and then you know that it's just a job. The person on the other side also respects you for doing this, and it is scary. You are afraid, but then you just go and deliver, and that's the training you've received, right? I said, that's largely the training in the education branch. You're trained to train others. So that's what you do, and that's what you go ahead and do. You're also trained to look after the station libraries and the schools. A very important role that we play is we are executive directors of the Air Force schools and also conduits between the KV principal and the air officer commanding. So a lot of the education on the base is your responsibility. It's not just service education, but a lot of the other education that is imparted, even in schools, even to airmen for their promotion examinations, all of that is the purview of the education officer. So you're taught all of this in those 6 months.
Got it.
That's what it largely is.
Ma'am, if you could also tell us, how does an, one ideal day for an education officer look like in terms of routine and responsibility? Any ideal day?
Okay. First ground rule, Akash, is there's no ideal day, or there's no similar day. No one day is as good as the other. Okay, each day looks, feels, and pans out differently. So even if you're the type who charts out his entire day and says, aaj mujhe ye kaam hai. I mean, almost all of us do it. In the Forge, we maintain our diaries and we have our list of to-do things, just like anybody else would. But unlike other professions, no 2 days are similar. So although you have your day chalked out and you go to work thinking that these are the files I have to clear, or these are the classes I have to take, or it doesn't really pan out that way. A lot of things, by the way, get done in the Forge at the last minute. Okay, a lot of things are surprises. You go to work thinking that these are the 4 classes I'm scheduled for today, and suddenly your boss calls you early in the morning and says, listen, you've been detailed as LO, or you're the duty officer today. You get a call from the adjutant's office saying change of plans, duty officer fell sick or whatever, and you've got to take over. So a lot of things happen last minute, right? I won't not just last minute, but a lot of change of plans happen. So things are very, very abrupt. You really can't schedule your day and think it'll go exactly as scheduled. So scheduling is good, but it doesn't always go that way. If you are posted to a training institute, by and large, you can stick to a schedule where you will be given certain number of classes. You will be given certain additional duties as well. So that's what an education officer's life looks like in a training institute on any given day. But if you're posted to a flying station, which eventually you are, and in our time, the rule had come that education officers need to first go to flying stations to know what the real Air Force is like, and only then get posted to training institutes, right? So if you happen to go to a flying station, there's no point even scheduling. The entire day is every single day is different, right? You will land up with surprises. You will land up with incidents happening all of a sudden. You might have to take on certain duties instantly, in an instant. And there's of course no saying no in the Forge. So whatever is allotted to you, whatever is assigned to you, has to be done. Whether you're doing it for the first time or otherwise, you can seek guidance, you can seek help, but then you just get on to doing it. So in a flying station, you play it by the year. You just you just have to report to work, and then the day just pans out in front of you.
Okay, got it, Mom. Suppose if I can ask you, any 3 life lessons that you have learned from the Indian Air Force which you still cherish? Any 3?
3 lessons. One, like I said earlier, it's all teamwork. So there is always someone having your back. There's always someone in front of you as well, because a good boss, a good leader always takes the rap for anything that goes wrong in the team. So that's definitely one. And you yourself. So if my boss is expected to take the rap for something that I have done incorrectly, I, on the other hand, as an officer, need to stand up for my men as well. And therefore the chain continues. A good leader always stands between his superior, his or her superior, and the people under him. And you've got to protect your men. That's when they live or die for you. That's when they learn to respect you, right? So that's definitely one. Leadership from the front, right? And courageous leadership. Another lesson I would say is that the Forge prepares you for everything, just about everything. So I don't think there's anyone who can come out of Forge saying there is something that he hasn't done, whether it's emceeing an event, whether it's Gana, Nachna, drama, whether it's taking charge of a particular function, whether it's being asked to completely take charge within a matter of seconds. You, while doing it, you feel scared. While doing it, you feel a little hesitant if it's your first time, but then once you do it, it builds your confidence. It's whether it's leading a parade, or whether it's leading men into battle, whether it's heading a team, that's heading out on a recce mission, anything, right? You are just tasked the role, and you've got to, take it on. And once you do it, you gain confidence, you keep going. So I think Forge prepares you for anything and everything, including one thing which is so personal that only Forge can prepare you for it, and that's death. So the Forge prepares you even for death. You experience the death of your friends, you experience the death of your immediate seniors, your people who are very close to you, and it prepares you, and you know how to take it. You know how to take it on the chin and keep moving further and further on. That there's no looking back. So that's another lesson. And third, um, third, I guess the camaraderie and the bonding is for life. So once you've been in the Forge and once you work together, you've worked shoulder to shoulder, you've dirtied your hands together, you've done things together. I think the camaraderie and the bonds that you form are for life. So these are the three lessons largely, Akash.
Got it, ma'am. Ma'am, you were also a short service commission officer. So, ma'am, in Indian Armed Forces, we have both PC, that is permanent commission, short service. So, what are the opportunities for an officer once he comes out as a short service commission officer in terms of what he can do, entrepreneurship or anything?
Right. So, like I said, my second lesson, the Forge prepares you for anything and everything. So, just like leadership, I guess management is something you learn firsthand. Incidentally, management as a concept was first learned from the armed forces. So every proponent of management, has always quoted examples, has always learned management, whether it's men, materials, or projects. Every sort of management has been learned from the armed forces. And you being a part of armed forces, I mean, can you even see the advantage that you come with? Right. So another person who comes with an IIM degree or a University of Harvard or Yale or whatever degree versus a person who has lived that degree. One is studying management, the other is experiencing management. So that's the first advantage you come out of the service with. Okay, if you're not still convinced about that, you also have your pre-release course, which you can do from any of the IIMs. That also prepares you to transition from a military life to a civil life and learn probably other things like marketing management or finance management. But largely, the broader picture, general management of men and materials, I mean, those are the largely the key aspects of management that you learn firsthand in Forge. So definitely when you come out as a short service commission officer, you have age on your side. You have lived and experienced management. You have done it all. So that's another advantage. Thirdly, you have the advantage of being a very confident walker and talker. Right? Even management students, some of them might just purely be geeks. Some of them might just purely earn, do well in studies and earn their certificates. But in the Forge, you may have been a very average student, but the Forge has groomed you in a way where you can talk and walk and be among the best as the best, project yourself as the best. So the confidence that you have gained through all of this is nothing compared to a civilian opting for a job. So you come out of the service with these advantages that hold you in very good stead when you try to apply for a job. Plus, if you have a professional degree, like you've already been an engineer, that's fantastic. I mean, even better, even easier to get a job. Right. So yeah, those are the things that you come out with as an SSC officer. And then depending upon where your expertise lies, all those options are open to you. And these days, if I may say so, a lot of MNCs, a lot of companies are very conscious of including, of having a lot of diversity in their workforce. And one of the aspects of diversity is hiring of veterans, right? So you have a lot of options open to you.
Got it, ma'am. Ma'am, before I move to the next question, if you could tell us about your, initiative where you're spreading awareness regarding QA sensitization and also the background.
Yeah, sure. So this is, so like I said, out of all the options available to you, when I opted out of service. I did my PRC at IIM Indore, and instead of taking a job, I wanted to play on my strengths and do something with my strengths. My strengths lay in training, and they also lay in writing, right? Writing, editing, these things come quite naturally to me, and that's what I decided to play on once I opted out. I became a content creator and a trainer. However, after a short stint with a digital marketing agency, I learned about the LGBTQ community. I learned about their stories, their pain points, all of that, because one of the verticals of that digital marketing agency was a not-for-profit digital magazine for the LGBTQ community. So that's when I, so to say, found my calling, and I decided to be an ally, a voice for the community. And now what I do is I sensitize people about the LGBTQ, be it corporates or college students, medical fraternity, sometimes even medical fraternity, doctors, nurses, ward boys, ayas, none of them know how to deal with a transgender or a person who identifies as queer. So they need sensitization. Government bodies like the police force, our lawyers, our judges, all of them need to be sensitized towards what the queer community is all about. Because you can't pass a judgment on something you don't know anything about, right? And it's very inhuman. So that's what I currently do. I also plan to start counseling parents who have queer kids to come to terms and accept the child for who they are.
Got it.
So this is largely what I do now.
Ma'am, if you could also tell us about the background that I see here. What is it?
Sure. So what you see here is a moniker that I call myself. It's called Queer Sensitization Catalyst, QSC for short. Okay. And over here, the QR code that you see has all my contact details, all my social media links. So you could scan that. You could reach out to me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the one I'm most active on, but it has my other contact details as well. And yeah, QSC is my moniker that I've coined for myself.
Okay, got it, ma'am. Ma'am, my next question is about, the leadership, because leadership is something that we will need in life, and also that has been taught in the armed forces. So what does leadership actually mean to you? And, as a young officer, when you join the Indian Air Force, you're leading a lot of men whose experience is probably more than your age. So how do you handle such situations?
Right. So like I said, leadership, the first lesson you learn is you lead from the front. One, you lead from the front and take the rap for those under you. Even if they are the ones who committed the mistake, you're next on the line and you take the rap for it, right? But when it comes to working, leadership is also working as a team and not working individually. So whether it's work or taking the accolades for it, you take it as a team. Nothing's individual. Nothing is self-centric in the armed forces. So that's a very, very keen leadership lesson that I feel is missing a lot in the civil. Civil is all about me and my promotions and my appraisals and all of that. So we do have appraisals in the armed forces. It's not that we don't, but when you work as a team. When you win, you win as a team. When you lose as a team, right? It's not individual centric at all. That's one of the things. Other than that, like I already said, every management lesson that you learn in textbooks and in IIMs or management colleges, all these they have learned from the armed forces. So when you live that life, I think you experience management and you experience leadership firsthand. Every day, as I said again, is different and teaches you something new, right? All you need to remember is you are in charge of the life, the welfare, and the well-being of the people placed under you. So that is something you should never forget. And I think that's the best leadership lesson that you get firsthand from the armed forces. As long as you care about the people under you and the chain continues, there is no question of anybody feeling unhappy or anybody feeling the morale being low. The morale is always low, not because of the work you do, but because of the manager you're under, right? As they say in the civil, you don't quit jobs, you quit your manager. right? And the same thing, if you learn from the armed forces, if your superior is the kind who takes care of you, who stands in front of you and leads from the front, there is no question of morale being low or being disillusioned with the service. Nothing of the sort happens. So I guess that's the best leadership lesson you can take away from the armed forces. Lead from the front.
Yeah. Mama, final question to you would be, a lot of aspirants will be watching us. So what will be your message to all those who want to join the armed forces, be it Air Force, Navy, or Army?
Okay, so this might sound a little off because so I don't mean to, put people off joining the armed forces. By all means, go ahead and join. But the message I want to give across is, don't get obsessed with the idea of joining, right? Because when you say, but I want to serve my country and I want to do this and I want to do that, remember that service to your country is not only through the armed forces. So while joining the armed forces or having the ambition to join the armed forces is fantastic, please go ahead and work towards it. Please join it. The armed forces needs young men and women. We need a force, right? We need someone to defend our borders. We need our motherland protected. So while the aspiration is amazing, I am not trying to put anybody off the ambition or the aspiration to join the armed forces. I would also say I have seen a lot of people undergo depression because they haven't been able to get through the SSB. They come back dejected and say, oh, my life's over. I couldn't do even this much. I couldn't do even that much. And jabki har SSB mein, you hear things like, don't worry, even Amitabh Bachchan was a reject, even Shah Rukh Khan was a reject, but the best example that I like is APJ Abdul Kalam. APJ Abdul Kalam was also a reject, and he went on to become the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces. So you can serve your country in many, 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 many ways. Okay. And coming back to the earlier question, OLQs are not to be adopted only up to those 5 days of SSB. If you genuinely believe that you have those OLQs, if you genuinely believe you want to inculcate those values, inculcate them for the rest of your life in whatever you do. So whether you work in the civil, whether you start an NGO, or whether you even become a homemaker, you're still a citizen of the country. There is a lot you can do for the country apart from a life in uniform. So that's the very key message that I want to tell SSB aspirants. Please try your best. Don't fake it. Be yourself. Go through the SSB. It's a wonderful experience. But in case you do not make it, do not get dejected in life. There's a lot more you can do for your country, even otherwise, even out of uniform.
Got it, Mom. Thanks a lot for your time on this interview, Mom. There was a lot of things that we will learn from you. And thanks again for your time on being on this interview. And Jai Hind, Mom.
Thank you. Thank you, Jai Hind. Thank you very much, Akash. Thank you so much for having me here. And Jai Hind.